Should we live with those divisions? Should we, at least, in terms of our collective prosperity, are we not better off trying to pool our resources and our capabilities together? Now, yesterday evening, in fact, the Prime Minister inaugurated a fuel pipeline to Bangladesh, to a place called Parvatipur in Bangladesh, from Silchar to Parvatipur. What it does is, it provides to the consumer, to the people of Bangladesh, access to fuel with all the advantages of scale that India has. Because as a larger economy with a stronger energy security capability, it is our ability to procure and refine fuel and then pass it on to our neighbors, which can make a huge difference in their lives. We had just done a few years ago something similar with Nepal. I give you that as one example. But we are today actually changing the landscape of this region through roads, through railways. Everything that I say is happening within the country is also happening around the country. Now, another way of changing it is, of course, as I said, through key partnerships. Key partnerships with crucial countries which can often provide technology and best practices. And in all of this, one way of preparing ourselves is also to start developing a global footprint. Global footprints do not happen overnight. They take a full generation. Today India looms large in its immediate vicinity. We have, in the last decade, a sense of extended neighborhoods. So we look at Southeast Asia, ASEAN as one. We look at the Gulf as another, Central Asia, and even in the islands in the Indian Ocean, we talk about the Sagar policy. But if I am looking 25 years ahead, I have to think, where would my interests be 25 years? Where would people be? Where would my businesses be? Where would my services be required? And it is important to start doing that now if it is to mature and be relevant over the course of the next 2 decades. So you will actually see, it's already happening, Indian diplomacy much more active in, say, Latin America or Pacific Islands. Sometimes you will ask yourself, why is this foreign minister going to Fiji or, Paraguay? Because Prime Minister Modi is not asking me to work for today or tomorrow or next week, next month, next year. We want to think Amrit Kal, plan Amrit Kal, prepare the ground for Amrit Kal. And a lot of what we are doing today is actually that effort. Now, every nation obviously would like to shape international relations to its advantage. The stronger ones are more successful. But it's something we all need to do, because it's one planet at the end of the day. It's a planet on which we compete, and here competition is not a negative word, where we compete to put our ideas, our thoughts, our agenda forward. So, some part of this preparation that I talk about is, how do you set the agenda? How do you shape the institutions? Now, again, I give you some examples of the last few years. Today, I think nobody would dispute climate change is right up there in terms of the collective priorities of the planet. So fine, we go for conferences, we haggle over what are our targets, then complain rightly that we don't get the financing for it. So that's one part of the conversation. But there are things we can do. Now, if you look today at how much solar energy has progressed, a lot of that is due to the fact that at COP21 in Paris, We pushed for setting up the International Solar Alliance today, which has more than 100 countries as members. We can see climate change affecting vulnerable geographies, topographies. We have taken the initiative to create something called the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, so that we build infrastructure for standards which would anticipate possible disasters in vulnerable areas. Or I could look at something very different. Take terrorism. Okay. It is something which has plagued us particularly strongly. You all know why. But, you know, it's one thing again, yes, we are combating it more strongly. We are making it unmistakably clear that there will be a cost to anybody who undertakes a terrorist action against India. But there is a larger way of responding to it. How do you constrict it? How do you cut off the financing? How do you delegitimize it? How do you make it unacceptable in the world conversation that a terrorist action by one country against its neighbor is just another form of statecraft? So here too, you know, how we have created institutions help to shape the agenda. Now, it can also be sometimes in working with other countries. I'll give you two examples on either side of India. When it comes to the Indo-Pacific, we have today, we are very active in a mechanism called the Quad. When it comes to the other side of India, we started something called the I2U2, along with Israel and UAE and the United States. So each of these steps is a way of preparing for a world that awaits us. But this world, as we become bigger, we are already the 5th largest economy. There are also legitimate expectations of us that we will do more for the world. So here too, you know, it will not happen overnight. We have to take the baby steps, the bigger steps, you know, do our region, go beyond the region, go further off. So for last many years, for example, if there was a natural disaster around us, some of you would remember the Nepal earthquake. You know, then there have been some natural calamities in Sri Lanka, something happened in Bangladesh, in Myanmar. This was our immediate region. But this year, when we saw the earthquake in Turkey, you know, within 24 hours, our national disaster response team was there. And we were able to set up hospitals to deal with, you know, with those afflicted. Our contribution to actually saving lives was something which was very, very notable. And of course, I mean, while you do things for the world, it's also very essential that we look after our own people. Already, there are roughly 34 million Indians and people of Indian origin abroad. And we have a sense of responsibility, obviously much more direct for our own citizens. And how does a country deal with this? No, it was a problem which actually came up during COVID as well. Because, you know, I must tell you, a lot of governments, lot of offices, lot of organizations, I won't say they took time off during COVID, but I mean, at least they did work from home, okay? Some of us had the privilege of working doubly from office, because for us, the COVID was a 24/7 activity, and there was something which was absolutely pressing which had to be done there. And we had a boss who was working triply from office just to make sure we worked doubly from office. So when we looked at the scale of this challenge, and I can tell you at times it was astounding, you know, there would be a cruise liner which had, suddenly you discovered it had 200 crew members of, you know, of Indian nationality who were stuck on some faraway place and now expected that they wanted to come home. Or there would be students, you know, we have today 1 million students abroad. A very large number of countries told students to go home. They shut down their hostels and said, well, COVID has come, time for you to go back. Now, we brought back during that period 7 million Indian citizens through something called the Vande Bharat mission. I mention that to you not just as an achievement. I mention that to you as the world that awaits us. That when we think of opportunities and mobility,